everybody, it's me, John Ward. I am back with another One Filmmaker, One Film, and today my guest is...
Everyone, my name is Emir Skalonja. I'm a film director, writer, producer, editor, everything. I've directed some pretty gory, cult favorite type films, mainly dealing with exploitation, gore, ultraviolence. Most known for Casting Couch film series, Casting Couch Slaughter 1 and Casting Couch Slaughter 2, The Second Coming. Today we're going to be discussing one of my more serious films with an underlying political undertone, Anthropocene, which deals with post-apocalypse in the world of COVID, I guess.
Yeah, and I have I got the I figure I have to do it here. So there's the Blu-ray for it. So you got that right there.
Yep, there it is.
And then I also have, because I got this before, the DVD of it.
Correct.
And which is the same cut of the movie, right? It's both the director's cut.
It is, yeah. They're both director's cut. The only one that's kind of like pressed for time was the Vimeo edition. It's about, I want to say, like 4 minutes less than what the physical media is.
Okay, yeah, and I'm going to ask you, if you can remember what, what the differences are, so so people can actually go see both films if they want to. So, now you said this. Oh, go on.
No. Go right ahead. No.
So this seems to be, like you pointed out, that you seem to kind of direct these types of movies, and I own them. So I own, this isn't everything you've done, but I picked out your kind of, post-apocalyptic films, kind of end of the world. So we have also Savage.
Savage, yeah. One of my personal favorites, actually. So.
Yeah, this is a good one, and well, they're all good actually. And then you're welcome. And then you have the Plague movies. So that's Plague 1.
Some of my favorites. I actually owe a lot to Plague movies, so especially the first one.
Yeah, I heard about these a while back, but I had no idea how to get a hold of them or anything like that. And then there's Plague 2.
And then there's the third one, yeah.
Yeah, Plague.
Yeah, like you're a collector, and I appreciate it. So.
Well, and on top of that, all three on Blu-ray.
Now, yes, that has a ton of bonus content. That has I'm talking about 5 or 6 years of making the 3 films. So that has cast and crew. There's about 45 minutes of interviews, just about the 3 movies on the 3 film disc set. Of the Plague series, deleted scenes, original trailers, a bunch of different stuff.
Yeah, they're all good, and I highly recommend for people to pick them up. So like I said, I knew of the first one. I knew that there was this movie out there called The Plague, and I think I saw the cover, and I'm just like, ooh, I want to see that, but I have no idea how to get a hold of it. And then when you and I started to to kind of talk and become friends, I still had no idea that you did The Plague. And it wasn't until I started buying your films that I'm like, wait a minute, is this the guy who made The Plague? Because I've wanted to see this. And I immediately bought all 3 because you can get them on Kanaki, and they're pretty cheap, right? They're what, $10 each? So
since there was a release for all 3 movies on Blu-ray, on one Blu-ray, all of those are actually going to be discontinued at the end of this month.
Oh.
And the only one that's going to be able to be purchased is going to be the Blu-ray version of all 3 films. It's just there's such a split between people who collect only DVDs, who collect only Blu-rays, and there's a mix of both. But since all 3 films are available on on a single disc, pretty much that's all that people have been asking me for. So instead of maintaining everything Konaki, everything is actually at my house now. And I think I have 1 copy of The Plague on DVD. So.
Oh wow! Okay, yeah. So these will be collectors collector's DVDs then.
Yeah. Yep.
So
Probably.
glad I got them. So, because yeah, there's a lot of stuff on these too. So that's good. And I really like the you do good
like a whole
covers.
extra movie there.
Yeah, you got good covers on these things.
So I owe that. I owe that to my good friend. So years and years ago, like super long story, but I won't get into it. I was with a publisher for my books, and that's how I met Jeffrey, who does all the covers for that company. And we kind of struck a friendship. He lives in Italy. He's Italian. I grew up in Europe, so like we bonded over like our mutual love of soccer. And the team from Rome, AS Roma, and we kind of kicked it up from there. And he ended up doing all of my covers, not only for books but like DVDs and Blu-rays, posters, like still promos, all of that type of stuff. So all like any like 99.9% of art you see, it's all done by Jeffrey. So he's a very, very gifted and works around the clock type of guy. So yeah, all of those covers are there.
Oh, nice. And it's good to make those connections because you, yeah, I mean, then you, then you get stuff like, because this is one of my favorites of them. So yeah, you get stuff that looks like that.
It's definitely a good one. I agree.
Yeah. So, with our film that we're going to be speaking of, how did you, I mean, what brings you to these types of films? Like, why do you, like, what is, you know, your like your love for kind of a post-apocalyptic end of the world type films? Because these are really bleak. They're very dark. I mean, they're not light movies.
They're not, and that's like one thing that I always like friends and family mostly. They're always the one like to make a comment, you know, does anyone ever live in your movies? Or like I'll always also hear like by some of my cast and crew, like when I send them the script, they'll be like, oh yeah, this is all I am, I'm dead. So it's like, so again, another you know, long story short, not going to like get super deep into it, but it's like one of the influences I've had in life. And like, as you know me from Facebook, but a lot of people who don't, I wasn't born and raised in the U.S. I came from Bosnia. I actually moved to the U.S. when I think I was 13. It had to be like 2002, just after September 11th, actually. So I don't know how familiar you're with the region, but I grew up, you know, amidst like, you know, the war and, you know, like the siege capital city of Sarajevo and the massacres and all that type of stuff. So, you know, like as a child, like I missed a lot of, you know, childhood. And I've kind of like seen a lot of things, you know. So post-war, I've dealt with a lot of like PTSD and stuff. You know, like into like my early teens and whatnot, but you know, like, you know, horror films, music and type of, you know, like that type of stuff, you know, I gravitate towards you know, death metal, black metal, so like more extreme genre of metal. So those are kind of like most of my outlets, you know. That's how I kind of like express myself. As you see, guitar right there. But yeah, it's kind of like one thing led to another. It was like, you know, the upbringing. So instead of like, you know, blaming everything, like blaming, you know, like my early years of my life and all of that type of stuff, like projecting it onto other people and stuff, I feel like I've, you know, kind of really gotten a really healthy outlet, like with, you know, with arts, because, you know, I can express myself, so, you know, like my depressions, my sorrows, you know, like my feels and whatnot. So that's kind of like, it's all projected into films instead of people. And, you know, like with the post-apocalyptic genre, it's, I read a really, really, really good quote when I started making Anthropocene. And I forgot who said it, but it's at the very beginning of the movie, like the opening credit. It says, "The apocalypse already happened. We're just grubbing in the ashes of it." and that like really struck me, because as you see like in all of post-apocalyptic movies, you know, there's always like the extremes. There's like those who survive, you know, will, you know, kind of like just be on their own and will try to do anything they possibly can do good, you know, to still kind of like continue like the human existence. And then you have like the opposite spectrum where, you know, like the hunters, they'll, you know, like do whatever they possibly can, you know, to survive, kill, maim, steal, you know, rape and pillage. And like honestly, a lot of that stuff like I've kind of like seen like when I was growing up, like amidst of like war and destruction. So I've seen like the worst of people. I've seen, you know, people kill over like religion, ethnicity. You know, it's like something very dangerously close to we're getting here in the US, you know. But you know, like for example, when we were growing up, like when I was growing up, you know, my family, like in Bosnia, we applied for assistance with, say, like Catholic charities, and Catholic charities, you know, like turn us away because we don't go to church. Um, you know, Muslim charities, they turn us away because we didn't go to mosque, you know, and like Orthodox charities, Jewish charities. So it's like, I'm like, okay, so this is what religion is all about, you know, kind of like excluding people. I thought everybody was always welcome, you know? So, you know, like it's kind of like a culmination of all things. So that's like where you see the bleakness, like in the films. I mean, there's silver linings in the films, I guess. Like, I mean, because I don't want to do any spoilers in case anybody decides to watch any films, but like in at the end of The Plague, I mean, like it's a pretty bleak ending, but like you have, you know, some major characters kind of like see through it. Um, like honestly, I'm going to say like the Anthropocene, the movie that we're discussing, it's probably the bleakest one, and that was kind of brought up because we started making that movie in 2019. Yeah, so we started in December 2019. We started shooting in January and February, and that's when COVID happened. So we kind of put everything on hold, and people got sent back home, stuff getting shut down, and like, you know, March, April, May, I was like, yeah, this movie's not gonna happen. But then like I started seeing, you know, people fighting over toilet paper on you know, like on YouTube, like all the stupid, like petulant shit. I'm like, when stuff started closing down, honestly, for me and my wife and my daughter, like, you know, fighting over toilet paper was like the least of our worries. Like, you know, like you manage, like you run out of toilet paper, you manage. You know, so that kind of like led me to really push through like the pandemic and like really like not scrap the movie, but push through it and really like put in all of like the awful things that people started to do at the start of the pandemic, like not caring about each other, don't care about the masks and all that type of stuff, like licking doorknobs, like licking, you know, like sneezing on produce and stuff like in supermarkets. So all of that like awful traits of humanity like really made that like into the film. So I mean, like you can literally see it like in every scene. So that was I kind of rambled on there. So
oh no, that's fine, because it kind of brings me into my next question. So it's so within this, because you and I share the same political views, and
right.
so do you, while you're making this, like you brought up toilet paper and stuff like that, do you so did a lot of that kind of go into this film? Because if you look at, and I'm going to bring these back up for a moment, so like Savage is more, I kind of saw it more like a Italian road warrior post-apocalyptic stuff, because it's a little more kind of Mad Maxy, you know, with what they were doing in here. Correct. And kind of how the characters looked. While when you have stuff like the 3 Plague films, you know, you're kind of going into Romero territory. So we got zombies, but then when you finally hit over here, now there are no zombies. There are no kind of Mad Max, you know, characters in it. That these could be your neighbors, your people, you know, that just live next door to you. So do you feel that like the toilet paper and people spitting on each other and licking doorknobs, did that play a factor into making this much more realistic instead of it being a little
Absolutely.
more, you know, little more, I guess, comic booky in a way?
Right. No, absolutely. I mean, like when you see Savage, you know, but Savage still has like a very strong political overtone. Like I guess like from the opening credits and stuff, you know, because like the opening credits kind of like set the tone and stuff, you know, the wars, famine, this and that. But it was like a more personal story though, because you have one guy kind of like, you know, seeing his family devoured by a group of cannibals, and now it becomes a revenge mission. He's got like the flak armor, he's got you know, like his mask, and you know, like it's all a hand-to-hand combat. You know, like where, you know, like where the character first, you know, fights and all that type of stuff, like made him a little more choreographed. Even though they were like really gritty, really like you know, like a lot of cheap shots and stuff, and like they were still choreographed. You know, like we spent like time, you know, going over moves. You know, like you know, hit, punch, kick, counter attack, and all that type of stuff. So it was like very calculated. Where like as you saw in Anthropocene, it's like anything goes. Like if you hear a gunshot, like you run away. Like you don't like investigate. Like you hear, you know,
Right.
like you're steering clear of people. Where you know in Savage it was mainly like you know like he is seeking out this group of people who you know who have wronged him. You know, so he's you know he wants to right the wrong. And yeah, that was you know what's so scary about Anthropocene because it was like you know when the pandemic first started to happen, you know like when because like we first started to hear about it in January of last year, and it was you know oh you know this happening in China, and we're like oh it doesn't matter it's in China. I'm like okay, I mean like there's still people you know I'm like you know and then you know the first case is like end of February, like they started coming in to US, and people are like oh it's like it's just like you know flu or a cold, like it's not a huge deal. Meanwhile like you know like 3 4 people died. I'm like okay, and then people started saying oh it's just the elderly dying, you know like it's not a big deal. I'm like oh so the elderly are not people. Like I'm, I mean, like, who the fuck says that? You know, oh, like it just affects the old. Okay, I'm like, are they not functioning members of society? You know, um, so and that's like in those early days, like when they started shutting everything down, and people like started. I actually included that clip in Anthropocene. It's like the first 30 or 40 seconds, like when the cars are burning, and like it cuts to the clip of it was a mother and daughter and like another woman. Mother and daughter had like 50 rolls of like toilet paper like in their cart, and the other woman like she just like wanted one, and like a full-on
Right.
brawl breaks out, and I'm like really like somebody like you see the shit's going down, and I was like when you see all this stuff it's like you start to wonder. I'm like is this it? Like is this it? Like we are fighting over toilet paper, and like is this a wrap for us? Um, and that was like one of the things that like really struck me. I'm like, you had 50 rolls of toilet paper in your cart. Are you not to spare a single roll like to give to somebody like who
No,
obviously needs it?
no.
And that's what's so scary. Like we always say, oh, we're Americans. You know, like we, you know, stop the illegal immigration, stop any immigration, stop all immigration. We have to take care of Americans. But then borders close, and now we are supposed to take care of Americans, but we're not. Like we don't care about masks. Like we're spitting on each other. Like we're saying just flu. Oh, it's just the elderly dying. And you know, like so. At what point do you actually like start to care for you know? Oh, let's take care of Americans first um, before we take care of like the other people. I'm like, okay. I'm like, we can barely take care of our own.
We wouldn't.
I mean, we
That's the
can,
thing.
we just don't want to.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
there is.
it's everyone for themselves.
Yeah, it's, and I've gone to arguments with people about this because I agree with all the sci-fi writers, going all the way back, to H.G. Wells and stuff, that we will destroy ourselves. I mean, if it's through a virus or
100%.
machines, and I don't mean like Terminator machines, but through like through computers or whatever that will launch missiles, or
Yep.
we will eventually kill ourselves. And you could see that just by people trying to steal toilet paper. Well, there are multiple ways of cleaning your ass. If you run out of toilet paper, use
Yeah.
hand towels. If you run out of hand towels,
Yeah.
hop into the shower.
Yep.
People would use leaves. It's just, there's ways of doing it that you could use your washcloth and then wash your butt. You don't have to have these 24 rolls of toilet paper. I remember seeing, and she was a Trump supporter, she clearly said it, where somebody took video of the woman with the truck, like the huge ass, pickup truck. And that's what all was in there. It was all toilet paper. And it was, and people were saying, can't you just spare one? And she's like, no,
Yeah.
no. And they were saying, oh, I bet you voted for Trump. And she's like, you bet I did. And she was taking it all. So that's, I mean, you could also tell just with the, with the insurrection of how crazy people were get. And it's, yeah, I mean, I think I think with this pandemic, it shows what people will do. And that's that they will barely help each other, that it's when
And
it comes
that's the
down
thing,
to it.
man. Like, this was a pandemic. This was something that was very easily controlled. You stay the fuck inside. You put on the mask if you go out for a couple of weeks. That was the thing. Like, it was like it. All of this was literally in our control. Like, you could have made your own arrangements. Like, you didn't need National Guard to step in. You didn't need the police. Like, literally, you could stay inside, like, monitor like your own symptoms and stuff, like, and then like later when they got testing and like when vaccines were available. But so can you imagine if we had something on like a bigger scale, like let's just say, for example, like an invasion or like a meteor hit, like mainland USA, and like everybody's destitute, like economies. Like, can you imagine if it was something on such a more massive scale, something that like we as like regular citizens just do not have, any control over? So like this pandemic was such an indication how petulant, how irrationally scared we are of each other. I mean, we should be scared of each other, as like if this pandemic was any indication, because it was just awful. Like your regular people, like person that you walk out on your driveway and you see as your neighbor, would stab you in the back. So it's like, it's like the worst of the worst.
Well, it's in our brains. There's a chemical in our brains that people say, the fight or flight, but it's mostly flight. So our nature is to destroy. So if you see a spider, you want to step on it, even though that spider is so tiny. Yeah, that it's not going to hurt you. You freak out and step on it. Well, I go and I pick it up with a piece of paper and I set it outside. But but that's the way. Now, if this is somebody just stepping on a spider, imagine what they would do. Yeah, if like a meteor hit, or if there was, some sort of, virus that would definitely kill us. So it's like it's just in our nature to. And there's been endless films about that stuff, like, the original, The Day the Earth Stood Still. And things like that, where, aliens who give us the cure for cancer say you don't deserve it. And they just fly away, So it's people don't learn,
man. And all of these people are gonna say, "Oh, it's just movies." Like this shit's based off of real life. Like we'll set something like in some sort of a scenario. Like we'll do aliens, we'll do zombies, whatever. But like Romero, like he did it the best, where like in the original Dawn of the Dead, and that's what that's what Zack Snyder's edition did not portray, and it should, because it was so much later, like in life, you know, consumerism is going to kill us. Consumerism, like this, like late stage capitalism, where anything and everything, like every second of every human life has a value. You know, like it's put a dollar sign on it. You know,
Right.
that, like, you know, that stuff, like the stuff that we like live and breathe. You know, like going to the mall, like we need stuff. Like we feel like we need these things. You know, and like that's, you know, that's going to be our demise, because like we want, you know, we want what the next person has. I don't know. I think it was either Voltaire or Jean-Jacques Rousseau, but it was a very famous uh, dissertation from the, I want to, so is like you had two cavemen, you know, like they evolved, and now like you have like agriculture, and now like everybody's settled down, so they have like property. You know, that jealousy, like in the other man. So that one man sees that that other man or woman has, you know, a bigger plot of land. They're going to kill, steal, maim, whatever, to acquire that bigger part of land. And it's just never going to end. That's how we got kings, and that's how we got religion, you know, like to control people. And like it's that innate human desire for more, for bigger, instant gratification. And like we're living it right now, you know. You know, songs on the radio are shorter and shorter and shorter, because that's our attention span, because that's a society that we live in. You know, like we got to go to work, pay the bills. You know, like you want a shorter commute. Like everything is like instant gratification. Like you want that machine that like is going to get you a six pack, is like you just sit on your ass all day. You know, it's like
Right.
you want results now. And that's what Romero, like, I feel really portrayed very heavily in his movies. Like, you know, the differences between classes. You know, the consume, like, you know, this awful consumerism that has us so engulfed, like, into like our own bubbles, where we just want more, and more, bigger and better.
Well, yeah, and don't forget, actually, Romero got his idea from Richard Matheson from I Am Legend, and I highly recommend people to read the book.
Yep.
Since the movies, except for the first one with Vincent Price, Last Men on Earth, which was written by Richard Matheson underneath you know, under a different name, is his book was all about communism, and that, you know, he was the, you know, Robert Neville is like the last like non-communist person, and so it was all, and not the Night of the Living Dead was you know, dealt with that type of issue too. So a lot of people don't know these films actually have really good messages. You just have to look under the layer of zombies or serial killers or whatever it might be, because there's actually a hidden message in there. That's
what a lot of people just see. Like,
yeah,
they just see it as another zombie movie. A lot of people. So
yeah, that's just it. So, you know, well, so okay, so then so you've done these other films. You've done, you know, Three Plague. You've done the Ravage. So now you got this our coronavirus. So you got, and how did you decide with the newest one that it would be like a young girl on the road and what she would be coming up against? How did that kind of story evolve, instead of just keeping it kind of the same that you were doing before?
So the Anthropocene didn't really start originally with you know, coronavirus story. So basically, not sure how familiar you are with a band called Cattle Decapitation. But they're an extreme death metal band from San Diego. And for years, I've kind of like not avoided, but kind of like didn't have my interest, because I'm like, you know, this band is called Cattle Decapitation, and I'm a vegetarian. I'm like, you know, I'm probably not going to listen to somebody like, you know, called cattle decapitation while I like do everything in my power to always avoid any and all meat and dairy products and stuff. Little did I know, like when I dug into the band, you know, I found out that the band, most of the guys in the band are vegetarians and or vegans. And most of their messages in their songs are like environmentalism, putting humans in place of animals. Like they have this one album called Harvest Floor. Literally, it's just people being herded like in slaughterhouses, like for meat consumption and all that type of stuff. So I'm like, sounds like my band. Well, in 2015, they released an album called Anthropocene Extinction. But all of their albums like deal with some sort of like environmental things that humans are impacting. So their 2012 album called "A Monolith of Inhumanity" was all about, you know, what people are doing to, you know, the planet. You know, like their opening song is called Carbon Stampede. So, you know, a lot of the album was like about like gas emissions, pollution, you know, toxic waste materials, like water supplies and all that type of stuff. Then in 2015 album, Anthropocene Extinction was all about, okay, so if we keep doing what we're doing over here, this is like what the planet's going to be like. Their closing song on Anthropocene Extinction, called "The Pacific Rim," is all about the Pacific garbage patch. It's like, I'm not sure how familiar with it, but it's like literally can be like seen from like miles and miles and miles away.
Oh yeah, it's just
like
that huge thing of garbage.
Gigantic, like hundreds of.
Yeah.
So then their 2019 album, which is very ironic, it's called Death Atlas. And it's literally the entire album. It's like, okay, so the 2012 album is like what we're doing to the planet. 2015 album was, you know, hey, this is what's going to be like if we keep doing this. And 2019 album was like, okay, so we kind of screwed up. On the 2019 album, Death Atlas, there's a song called Bring Back the Plague. The song came out in 2019. The band went on tour, pandemic, kind of ironic. And there's also a song on that album called Uneraseable Past, which is literally everything culminated to everything that we've done, you know, like from religious standpoints to like failing to address like, you know, famine, shortage of water, undrinkable water, the lack of, you know, food supplies, food storages, and all that type of stuff. And like it's culminated, and it's like, okay, so like there's literally nothing we can do, like, and everything that we do is too little, too late. So all of that kind of like over the years, like really like culminated for me to make Anthropocene. And it started with, I wanted to do just like a survival, but not like Savage, where he's like actively seeking people and he wants revenge. And it was like very entertaining, you know, like with violence and like gore and stuff. I mean, like we're like, you know, like decapitated carcasses and stuff, and like cannibals like eating, like, you know, basking in gore and stuff, you know. So it was like for gore hounds. Like I wanted to make Anthropocene like very almost like unwatchable, and not like for entertainment purposes, but I really wanted it to be hard to watch, because like it's stuff that, you know, would happen, and it does happen. Like the main character, who's a fantastic actress, Michalina, you know, like you know, where in a movie where like she doesn't, you know, like she drinks the last of her water and there's like no more water around, she can't find, you know, like she pees in a bottle and like she drinks her own urine.
That's one of my questions.
Crystal,
that's on my notes. Does she drink her own urine?
So we watered down apple juice. That's what that was. Because, you know, like when you are dehydrated, your urine does have like that very concentrated yellowish, orangish type, you know, hue. Whereas when you're fully hydrated, you know, like it's mostly clear. But or something like that. I don't know. But yeah, so like we took orange juice and it was, I'm like, yeah, this is way too dark. So like we just kind of like diluted it a little bit. And when we showed it in the theater, we did have one person walk out. There were a couple gag reflexes when that happened. But that was my goal. Like I really wanted to, make something like very unbearable. Like I'm in a different scene, Crystal, my good friend Crystal, like who also did the special effects in Anthropocene. She self mutilates and like she eats her own, meat. Like she cuts her like skin and meat off her thigh, and like she eats the flesh off her thigh.
Gotta do
So
what you
that
gotta
was, and
do.
that was like a 3-minute scene where like huh?
Gotta do what you gotta do.
Yeah, like that's so that was like so that was my goal, like not to make like an entertaining movie, but to make it like just like very very uneasy, like to keep you on edge, and not because of like some like exciting action and stuff, but like because these are like very like vile things that are happening. And in terms of like how I wanted the story to unfold, I wanted to get just some average, like everything about her is average. As you see, like Michelina, like she has like piercings and stuff. Like she has like a multicolored layered hair. She's kind of like a punk goth emo type chick. At the beginning of the movie, like with her boyfriend, kind of like just like running away from like a mob basically. And I literally just wanted to see the progression of like how her physical and mental state deteriorates. And what I said in the beginning, like it didn't start as a coronavirus movie. It was mainly like just to see like the like the slow demise of a character. When pandemic started to happen, we almost like ended up like not making the film because we started to shoot at the beginning of January. We shot for a couple of days and we went into February and we stopped. And then like, everybody started testing positive, things were closed down, like you have the social distance and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, this is not gonna happen. Well, a few weeks later, I'm like, you know what? Why don't we just use this? They like started to ease the restrictions like towards the end of May into June over here, like in New York. And I'm like, yeah, let's just rewrite a couple of things in the film. Let's let's rework the second half of the script, and let's like do the Corona stuff. Like let's add. I mean, like we never called it Corona movie, but like we showed the people wearing masks. We show them coughing, hyperventilating, not being able to breathe. And as you saw, we showed people who wear masks, people who don't wear masks. So there was that sort of a statement comment in there. And yeah, so we kind of like, I'm like, we're gonna have to wear masks, while we're shooting. We're not gonna have to have a lot of people. So I cut out a lot of characters. We incorporated the masks like in the movie. And it was like, I mean, like, it's funny now, but like we had sanitizers, like like we did everything in our power, like not to have like more than 1 or 2 people like in the scene in the second half of the film. So you'll see like in the beginning there's like groups of people and mobs and 4, 5, 6 characters at once. But then like towards the second half there's like no more than 3 people in a single shot ever, like for like the last like hour of the film. So that was looking back at it now, it's like I'm so happy I did the film, because it's like something that came out of the pandemic for me to commemorate the pandemic itself, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because it's interesting is you have at the the beginning of the film, you have your quote, then you have the two news reporters that are talking. There's a ton of snow, a lot of rain. And then it goes to my scene, because I'm in the film. I'm kind of that divider between the two main stories. And then after that, the main actress looks very different, and it seems more summer. It seems much hotter.
Yep.
So you have two totally different kind of seasons going on, which I think is interesting, and I think that's pretty cool, because it's just not. I love things in the snow, but being out here in Vegas, I also love things that are like deserty and hot and stuff. So, well, let me ask you, what was your budget on this?
So we had a campaign going, and our budget, I think, on a campaign was set for 3,000. But our and I can't really say anything. Like, I think we collected about 500, but you know, when people like started being laid off, I kind of like I didn't end the campaign. I just left it run out. I just didn't push it anymore, because I'm like, people are like, you know, trying to find ways like how they're going to pay their mortgage, like, let alone give me like a couple of dollars to finish my movie. So that one really turned out into people like just letting us film places, people offering their places for, you know, our shoots. The character Michalina, when she hears a gunshot and she starts to hide, and she sees Heather, who's another great actress, and Christina, another great actress, kind of chasing each other, like all like bloody and naked and stuff. And Heather's like shooting after her, like she shoots her. So that whole segment that was done on Christina's mother's property. She offered that to us. We were there for like a couple of days. And people honestly donated like a lot of stuff to us, you know, like from blood and props and all that good stuff. So really not a lot came out of my own pocket, which usually does. But like when everything was said and done, I think like we did spend like what we aimed to collect. We did spend about just maybe just under $3,000, I think. And that was our goal initially, was like, regardless of pandemic, like before the pandemic was like even thought, my goal was to shoot the film over like a 6-month period and like show the different seasons. Well, we kind of like missed out on spring because, you know, of that's when the corona was like raging. So we went from like winter, then we have like your tying scene, and it's like, whoop, like we're in summer. So
yeah, because it all works. I mean, it doesn't seem like it's that you had to wait. So it was, but now I noticed that in the like with the narration, it says by 2019. And so I'm guessing, you know, because you didn't know about coronavirus or anything, in a way, is this kind of like an alternate timeline for like our planet, in a way, that because this didn't happen in 2019, but in the movie it does.
So 2019, and as you see, in the beginning of the film, there's a scene, like we don't say it, but we allude to it. There's a Christmas tree in one of the scenes when she goes in, and so it's at Christmas 2019. So the reason why I initially put 2019 was there was a study that was done, and I can't really remember, I can't recall at this point in time, but there was a study that was done, and like 2019, like by 2019, we have lost like a great deal of like certain species of animals that like we're never going to recover ever again, like in our lifetime. Like we drove so many species like to extinction. And we currently live in it hasn't been like really, set in stone, but a lot of scientists loosely describe the period that we live in as Anthropocene. It's a geological period, and it's a first and only geological period that's actually like quote unquote man-made. So everything that happens in our lives, like in our nature and all of that type of stuff, is well, not so much controlled, but influenced by by human activity. And like by 2019, we had to have made certain strides, like in agricultural like revolution and all that type of stuff, to to prepare what's to come within the next few years. The World Bank actually is predicting that by 2025 or 2030, we will have to prepare for like a massive displacement of people. War refugees, immigrants due to like droughts, famine, political conflict and strife. And like 2019 was sort of like a hey, we have to get this, like we have to get this like in a home stretch. Like we have to address like the water issue all around the globe. Like we have to address deforestation all around the world. Like all of these things that had to be addressed. And again, this is, I'm not trying to preach here really, and it's not because I'm a vegetarian or anything, but there is, we have a planet of 7.5 billion people, and our like, our factory farming, like the huge consumption of like of meat, and the methane gas that produces, that just being trapped like in the atmosphere. So you have like 7.5 billion people on this planet, and the agricultural things that we have set in place, from meat trade to like how we farm and all that type of stuff, it's just like not viable to sustain our way of life for much longer. So like the agricultural activity like has to revolutionize, like to accommodate like a rapidly rising population. Like you have to find like alternatives to meat, because that's gonna run out. We cannot do because like we're doing factory farming, like we're doing slaughterhouses and farms the same way for like the last like 50, 60 years, and our population is like drastically increasing. So like that has to be addressed. So like 2019, 2020 were like the real like stretch goals, like to where we have to revolutionize what we're currently doing to accommodate for the calamities that are supposedly to happen like within the next few years. So that's kind of like why I said everything in 2019. So like, I mean, 2019, 2020. So that was kind of like, hey, this is like, like we're 5 minutes to midnight and like nothing's happening. So.
Okay. So with okay, that's interesting. So when I'm watching the film, then how far is it from, if that's kind of like, you got that 5 minutes left type of thing, what happens after my scene, how much further are we down the line? Because now your lead actress is different looking, her hairstyle is different. Is it just a couple months, couple years? What's the difference from what you?
So that's just a couple of months.
Okay.
So that was just a couple of months. It takes place. So, excuse me. So both times we filmed. So when you see the stuff like in the winter and when you see the stuff in the summer, we were kind of dealing with the present. So when we filmed in December, we were in present time. When we got to you, we were in present. So, and all of that stuff is happening simultaneously. So, Michelina's, things like she does look different, but that's like a few months after, like Christmas, I guess. Yeah. So like your scene and her scene, that's like almost simultaneously happening. So like your scene is like a segue into, oh yeah, so on top of famine and cannibalism and all that type of stuff, oh yeah, we also have this killer virus. So
would the stuff that's at the beginning, is there, like, is no one's dying of the plague yet? Because I noticed in the credits I'm considered first infected. So am I the first person then to die of this, and then it goes into now people are now being infected by this virus, where before it was just more survival for water, food, things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yep, because remember in the first scene, like with the two newscasters, they're talking about like famine, the lack of food and wildlife and all that type of stuff. So, and one of the newscasters says that there's like huge shipments of like meat and canned goods that are like being shipped in, but then like the news like thing ends and we go into the movie.
Okay. And I'll tell people out there that if they do get the opportunity to be in someone's film and they can watch the trailer before you shoot your scene. Because I had originally gone out and just shot random shots of me just walking woods. Joe Lujan and Chris Ivan helped out, and we just shot and that was it. And then I saw your trailer, and I'm like, oh, there's water. People need water, and people are wearing the mask, and so it's like, okay, so whatever I'm seeing in that trailer, I put into my scene, and then we added more to it to make it more closer to what the trailer looked like. So, so if anybody, has that opportunity,
it was kind of a miscommunication on my end too, a little bit.
Yeah, I think when we originally spoke, it was just kind of like, oh yeah, you're just kind of wandering and coughing and stuff. It's like, oh, okay. But then I saw the trailer and it was just like, oh, there's more to this than just wandering and coughing. Let's add something to it. But now I realized with my stuff is I just shot some scenes for another filmmaker named Donald Wills, and he's doing a short film for my cosmic horror movie that's kind of Blind Idiot God. And I have like a little part in it. And what I did was I shot all my stuff and I sent it to him and let him pick everything. And so he can edit it however he wants to. So if he likes take 3, use take 3. But with you, and I should have done the same thing, and I'm going to do it now in the future. And of course, if you ever do a third cut of the movie, I'll do it, is send you or somebody else all the footage. Like, this is everything I shot. Take what you want from it, because what I sent you was a completed scene, which of course saves you time, but you might have like take 2 more than take 1,
Yeah, no, I agree. But it was like, it's always like those, I mean, I've been kind of lucky with like happy accidents, type deal. And I believe that, wholeheartedly. Just last week, so I was recording a song here, and I got this drum track going for the song, and I'm like, okay, yeah, but I think I hear something in the background. I'm like, I don't think I put that in. So somehow it was picking up something like an extra like drum beat every like few beats, and I'm like, I don't think I put that in there. I'm like, I don't know how that got there. And I had my wife listen to it, and she was like, I mean, I don't know where that came from, but like it sounds good. And I'm like, yeah, I definitely didn't put that there, but somehow it got picked up from somewhere, and it was like an extra like a drum beat every few beats, and I'm like, no, like that definitely sounds good. I don't know like where it came from, but so happy accidents, man. So like I know like we went back and forth a little bit with your segment, but like at the end of the day, I really think like it served a really good purpose. And again, it was like my sort of thing. I should have said, oh yeah, I want this, and that. I was like very vague. with my description of it, but I'm like, yeah, he can just shoot everything. And then like when you sent me like the edited scene, I'm like, this is fantastic.
Well, thank you. So, and my scene is a little edited. It's a little, it's a different structure. Well, it's not structured differently, but there's different stuff in it in your director's cut. So when I heard that you were doing that, I asked if I could re-edit my scene. So the original version of my scene you can also see in the original cut of the film. So, it all worked out, but it's all a learning thing. You just learn down the road, what's going on. So. But actually, right before my scene, our lead character she comes across some Stephen King books, and she picks out one. She picks up Bag of Bones. Now, is Stephen King in there on purpose? Is Bag of Bones there on purpose?
Bag of Bones was Stephen King's was definitely on purpose. It didn't have anything to do with the fact that my entire bookshelf is Stephen King. In the family, because that's where we shot the scene. We shot it in the family room. So right out this door is our kitchen, and you walk through the kitchen, and you go like just down like 3 steps, and you are in family room. So that's where we shot that scene, and I'm like, okay, so we're gonna pick up the Stephen King book and Bag of Bones. I wanted Michelina to specifically pick Bag of Bones because I don't know if you read it, but it's one of the least horror themed books by Stephen King. It's more of it's something that could potentially like air on Hallmark, for example. It's more of like a ghost story, but like a very loose ghost story. But there's a line in the book that keeps, repeatedly like reappearing. And it's that characters, like certain characters, are nothing just but Bag of Bones. So that's like, I mean, I don't know how many people like who saw the movie read the book, or like if the reference was going to be, caught on. But I wanted to literally kind of beat that point, like beat it all the way home, and like really, say, yeah, like these people are like literally just like wasting away. They're nothing but Bag of Bones.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So that was kind of like my thing.
So with one thing that I like about your films are locations. You say that you're kind of like in this kind of like small, kind of like rural area and stuff, but you have like great locations in here, and just not buildings but roads. You have tunnels that like an overpass that a train goes by that's been in a couple of your films. I mean, you got all these great areas for the location that you're in. Tell me about locations.
Yeah. So all of my films have been shot all over Western New York. So like when people ask you like where you're from and you say from New York, they automatically think you're from New York City. I live about 900 miles west of New York City. So I live in Western New York. The town, the village that I live in, it's a very tiny village of Angola, and it's located on Lake Erie. We're about 40 miles away from Pennsylvania border. So the road that you're talking about, a very narrow road with an overpass. That's a very famous road. It's called Holland Road. It's a very old urban legend from my town about the Pigman. Yes. So that's where the urban legend of Pigman originated, and that's one of my films, The Holland Road Massacre. It was just like a legend that popped out like that, like back in the 50s or 60s, like this guy, like this inbred, like hillbilly redneck type deal. He like killed 3 teenagers who were like constantly trespassing on his property. He strung them like down from the bridge. Like he would have like pigs' heads on his, you know, around his property and stuff. And that's how the Legend of Pigman was born. And it was our town was featured on the Travel Channel and like Discovery about, and they specifically, you know, did those, episodes on Holland Road. But the dilapidated buildings, some of the buildings that you saw in Anthropocene, and the Plague movies. Especially the first Plague movies, a lot of those buildings are from a town further to the east, about 120 miles, called Rochester, New York. So if we go like 40 miles north from our village here in the city of Buffalo is a very dilapidated city. You have all of these old factories that have been closed down for years and years and years along the waterfront, and they just make for like great backdrops of things, especially like apocalypse. It's like if I'm like filming an apocalypse movie, I'm like, all I have to do is like drive like 25 minutes from my house.
Yeah, I mean, you got some great locations in these movies. I'm always impressed, and you know, and you film in the snow, which I always appreciate because I love stuff that takes place in the snow. Blood always looks good on snow, so you cannot get away from that. Yeah, I mean, it's like a giant snow cone with just red all over it. It just looks really nice.
Yep. And that's what Pigman, like, not to go like completely off topic, but like the Pigman, with my actress Heather, like her wearing the white coat, being covered in snow, like it's like flurries everywhere, and like Pigman just appears, and like there's like just blood everywhere. I thought it was really cool.
She's a beautiful woman, and she really stands out in that film. Yeah, with the white, you know, with the white clothes, red hair. It just I was like captivated. Like I couldn't keep my eyes off of her.
There's a lot of contrasting in that movie.
Yeah,
I mean, him in like black pants and like camo and like the bloody mask, and everything's just like shrouded in white. Actually, that wasn't like, most of that wasn't planned. We woke up the night we went to bed, the night before we went to bed. We woke up like 5 hours later. We literally have like 3 feet of snow on the ground, and I'm like, we're just gonna have to make do with this. And that was again one of those like that I'm talking about, like happy accidents and like stuff that we can't control, but it really works in your favor. So
yeah, it definitely does. So one thing that I do want to point out, and I hope this isn't a spoiler, but it's just the knife in the ground that goes through, and I'm not going to say whose foot, but it goes through a foot. And that was very realistic. And normally that stuff doesn't make me go, ugh, but that actually made me go, ugh. So that was quite effective if you were trying to, you know, disturb people. So how was that done?
So that was like one of like the four like, I didn't want to overload Anthropocene like with, and as you saw, like most of these, what I call them in a movie, like life-changing things in the film, like eating the flesh, you know, like to survive. I mean, like your own flesh, you know, like drinking your urine. And so when she's walking and she steps onto it. So basically what we did, Crystal, who did our special effects, so we took a very, very thin piece of plywood and we kind of like just like shaved it off and made it into a point, so like a steak. So what we did a couple of times, so we had to do like a cutaway shot from it though, because like it like it wouldn't puncture all the way through like every time like she stepped on it. And also like I didn't want, you know, like like to shoot a scene like where she steps and you can clearly like see and feel that like her foot's not in her sneaker. So we did a cutaway shot. So we shaved it off, we stuck it into the ground. She was walking, we hear the effect of, you know, like impaling flesh and blood squirting and all that type of stuff. And like we look down and she has this huge stake like protruding like right from her foot. So the stake was in the ground, and she already stepped into it, and like we ripped it through the sneaker and stuff. Which wasn't planned initially, but she was like, "No, yeah, just go ahead, destroy the sneaker. Like this is my old pair, anyways." So we're like, "Okay, thanks." So yeah, it was. It took a couple of shots, but Crystal did a really good job, like with everything. Like she covered it like with leaves and stuff, so like it still gave an impression that like she's walking and stepping on it. So, like we didn't have to show the entirety of it going through the entire foot. We just had to show the aftermath, and I think it was still pretty effective.
Oh yeah,
And
no, I thought it was very effective. Yeah, that's your cat.
Yeah, she's not agreeing with a lot of what I'm saying.
So. Yeah, cats often disagrees. So, and one thing I noticed in the second part is the lead actress has a shirt. What is? I think it's Solo Sledge. What is that shirt?
I don't know. So so here's another tidbit that I'm gonna say that I did say in the special features in like my introduction, because in director's cut on the Blu-ray and DVD, like I actually I have an interview, and I talk a great deal about like the process of making the film. So Michalina, the main actress, she actually got pregnant in February of 2020. She found out that she was pregnant, and we're like, okay, so we're gonna have to somehow do, you know, this, and that's like when the whole thing happened. We're like, well, we don't even know if we're gonna make the movie anymore because of the pandemic and all that type of stuff. So I told her, I'm like, okay, so we're gonna have to cheat the shots, because by the time like we restarted making the film, she was already like 4.5 months pregnant. So like she started to show. So I told her, I'm like, you gotta wear some baggy clothes. You know, wear something that's going to like detract from like your stomach, from like your midsection or like any other type of stuff. So she wore the shirt like with that logo, which like was like the focal point. I never asked her what it was. Now I'm gonna, because like now it's bugging me. Yeah, so I told her, I'm like we'll do the best, you know, like we'll just do whatever we possibly can. And as you saw, like in the second half, there are very few shots where her entire body is shown. So I told her to wear a lot of black. Which I mean, she normally does, so it wasn't a problem for her. So yeah, like, but as far as like what the logo is, it's some sort of a problem, like an indie band or something like that.
And that's pretty much what I figured, that it was, yeah, some sort of, yeah, probably like a local indie group or something like that. And to kind of go off of what you're saying, you know, because this is a post-apocalyptic, you know, type film, is at some point characters can be thin, some point they can be heavy, or they could start off heavy and become thin. They can even just, you know, like if you have to stop filming for 6 months or whatever, if they lose weight or they gain weight, it doesn't matter, because they're out there eating whatever they can. You know, they may not eat for 3 or 4 days, or they may find a whole chicken and eat it or something like that. And then clothes too, because you were saying that she needed to wear something baggy. Well, now she's just finding clothes. I mean, she's not going into a store, you know, to buy designer clothes. She's finding whatever can fit her. So if something's a little tight or a little loose, it makes sense because of the surroundings. So, it works. I
Absolutely.
mean, I never thought of that. Yeah, I did watch that
So,
on the Blu-ray. There is behind the scenes, there's a trailer, there's also creating music. So there's some good stuff to watch in the special features too.
So, uh, the one thing that did work, and it worked very well, for Crystal's character, in the film, is that so it was that contrast where one character was like very cautious about her food. She was cautious about her health, like even like in the apocalypse, like you saw like how like she conserved water, like she wears a mask, and like she's always like on the lookout, like she's a hoarder. Whereas Crystal, her opposite, is more like reckless, like she's just there for the moment. So like when she finds like that jug of water, like she just like wastes all of it. And Crystal actually, from January to when we restarted filming, she actually lost a lot of weight, and that shows in her character. And so like what she did like in the film, like she applied all of like these sores to herself, like these cuts and bruises and whatnot. So like she like really like and like she like really she did a really good job like showing like how like her cheeks were like sunken in, like her eyes. So I thought that worked very well, and especially the contrast between the two.
Well, and with Crystal, I thought it was funny, and I don't know if this is intentional or not, but so she's chasing after the lead. I'm going to steal your water. That's like her main thing of saying, I want your water. I want your water. She finds a river. In the river is like a Pepsi bottle, like a 2-liter Pepsi bottle, which she then could have, which she drinks what's ever left in it and throws it away. She could have taken that bottle, filled it up with water from the river, and then just taken it with her. She would have had a 2-liter bottle of water that, at some point maybe find a rope or a belt and just could strap it over her. And I thought, well, wait, but she's after her water. She has a whole jug right there. There's a whole Pepsi bottle. Purpose, not on
So
purpose.
yes. So that showed. Well, I wanted to show two things with that. One was, I'm like, at first I was very skeptical about showing Pepsi, but I'm like, what the hell? I'm like, whatever. I'll do
Right.
it. Um, so the first thing I wanted to show was, like how all the waste goes everywhere. So plastic is one of the huge things. It always ends up everywhere. So Cattle Decapitation's 2015 album Anthropocene Extinction has a corpse like washed up on the shore like a whale, but it's like a human being, and like the rib cage is all open and it's just like plastic like spilling out. So I really wanted like to show like her disregard of like literally, oh hey, there's a bottle, I can take it, but you know what? I'm just gonna chuck it, and like it's and like in that shot, it just floats down the river, and it gets stuck. So one, I want to show that. Second is I wanted to show just like how blindsided and narrow-minded people are. That she has a temporary solution right in front of her eyes, but she's chasing something or someone that she might, she may or may not attain. So those are the two things that I kind of went for.
So might have been a different ending then if she did fill the bottle up. She'd be like, "Oh look, I got water. I don't need hers. Okay, bye." And then she just walk in the opposite direction into movie.
Yeah. But it's
She's
a
like,
whole vendetta that literally starts at the very beginning of the movie.
because now it's my water and you don't get it.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
yeah, certain things could, and that's because I was wondering about that. I'm like, he had to do that on purpose because it's so obvious of what somebody would do. They would fill that bottle up, but she seems to be so angry and mentally out of it and everything that it wouldn't even dawn on her. Yeah, she's got
Yep.
that
And
single
how,
track
like,
mind.
yep, correct. It's like you have this thing and nothing else matters. Like you literally have like blinders here. And like the only thing that matters is like that ultimate goal that like you're trying to you know, kind of like go after, even though there's all of these things like everywhere. So that's like a really, so that's what like Crystal and I like really wanted to show. We wanted to show how different people handle different situations. So it's a really like really stark contrast before like with how Michelina uses the water and like any and all supplies that she can like, you know, find lying around versus how, you know, how Michelina treats her bottle of water versus how Crystal would treat her bottle of water. So it's like a stark contrast, like, you know, like to really dumb it down, you know, like like, you know, maskers versus anti-maskers. So it's like how like you just like how you treat others and like your belongings, I guess.
That's true. Okay, yeah, I could see that because, like I said, both of us are on the same, you know, on the same side here,
Yeah.
so I could totally see that. So, now before I get into, I kind of want to go back to some questions I have that would have been for earlier. But what are, since you've made now so
Sure.
many of these kind of post-apocalyptic films, what films stand out to you in this genre that inspire you and that you really like? Films that you could recommend to people if they like these types of movies.
Gotcha. So I have to say, like, first and foremost, it's going to be the 1978 Dawn of the Dead. Like, first and foremost, that's at the very top. It, it wasn't the movie, like, it started as a book, and it's one of my favorite books of all time, and it is one of my favorite films. Cormac McCarthy's The Road.
Oh yeah.
The Road was made into a movie with Viggo. Yeah. Well, yeah. So that was my big inspiration for just like the post-apocalyptic genre. So the 1978 Dawn of the Dead, The Road. There is a very small independent. Well, it was independent, but I think it was funded by WWE. I want to say, but it has Shawn Ashmore in it. It's called The Day. It came out in like 2011, 2012, and it's a very bleak sort of kind of like everyone dies, and like all of the events in the film they take. It's a very post-apocalyptic. It's a very good post-apocalyptic movie. It's very bleak. It's very character-driven too. It's a short. It's a short film. I think it's like 78 minutes. But like it gets the message across really well. So that's another one. And honestly, I'm a huge. I guess it's not a post-apocalyptic movie, but it has like a really good. I guess it can be considered a post-apocalyptic movie, but the movie called Elysium with Matt Damon.
Oh yeah.
That was. I'm not gonna get into it because I'm gonna rant for a half hour. But that was a movie. I watched it. My wife and I went to a theater, and the theater just happened to be a part of this gigantic mall further up north from where we live. And like, you know, like how the movie really shows like the like a huge gap of like the haves and the have-nots.
Oh yeah.
You know how the earth is just like a garbage dump, like a heap of rubble and, you know, disease and crime, and like up like in our orbit you have Jodie Foster as like this ultimate supreme leader who like everybody has like healthcare, like they've cured mortality almost, you know, like with like you walk into those booths, oh, like you have cancer, no, like you walk into the tanning bed and cancer's cured. but everybody on Earth is like, still just grubbing for things. And yeah, like I remember seeing that movie and like us walking out and walking by the food court, and I'm like, I guess it's kind of wrong for me like to think this or like to see that at that point in time, but I'm like, I was watching all of these people, like literally 10, 15 bags of just like shit that they just bought, like stuffing their faces, like, like with anything and everything, like from the food court, like. And I just saw this movie that like literally is so relevant to our time, whereas like we don't have access to, like, we're one of the only nations, like in like developed nations that don't have universal healthcare. Like we're one of the only nation, like developed, like UK, France, Spain, Italy, Norway. I mean, like we can't even compare with this, like with the Scandinavian countries. But so I'm like, I saw this movie and like I'm watching all these people and I'm like, everybody's just so oblivious. Everybody's just living in the moment and everybody's just so oblivious to like everybody else's plight, to everybody else's, like hardships and shortcomings and, and like it felt really wrong, but I was like so angry, like at people, and like these people like who didn't even know me, but I'm like looking at this family, they have like 50,000 bags that they just bought of shit they probably don't even need, and I'm like inside of my head, I'm thinking, I'm like, there's like people like, in this very country that don't have like, they don't know how they're going to provide the next meal. And I know it's really wrong to think like that because like it's not their fault, but it's, it's just like the society that we live in, I guess. Introspective here.
Any others?
No, those are my game changers. Those are the ones that I like really look up to.
Okay. Yeah, well, that's a good list. I'll have to check out The Day. I think I've heard of it, but I haven't seen it. I've seen the other ones.
Yeah, like I said, like it's an indie film, like sort of speak, but like it was produced by WWE for whatever reason. I don't know why WWE would produce it, but they did.
Well, they had their own film production company going for a while. It still might be going, but yeah, they were funding some films.
Yeah, that was like, but it was only, but there's always like a wrestler that would be involved, or like a past wrestler or current wrestler, and I can't recall if there was anybody in that film that was a wrestler. It might have been, so that's probably why. But it's been a while since I've seen it. But like I saw it a couple of times, but like the first time I saw it, I was like, it had a very good impact on me. So
I'll have to check it out then. So then, okay, so that I'm going to go back a little bit. So we discussed the budget a little bit. So pre-production on the film, this is obviously pre-pandemic and all that stuff. Probably had, I would assume, no idea that there was going to be like a pandemic coming up. What was your pre-production on the film like? Thinking everything is going to be fine in the future.
Right. So so again, like I said, the goal was to film for 6 months. So from, December, and then, maybe take like a month along the way somewhere, but it was like to show different seasons, and like the summer would be like the ultimate demise. And again, like Corona and stuff like that kind of like threw everything off, but that was the goal. And it obviously everything started like with an idea, and I started like to shoot, like my thoughts to my partner Crystal in film, and our partner Jake. So we kind of like, discussed everything, what we wanted to do, like what we want, the feel to be, ultimate survival. It's not like no like bravados or machismo or anything like that. It was just like ordinary people, like, throwing in like these very unfortunate circumstances. So, and, a lot of it changed, but I dished out like a fairly significant script, and the script had very, very little dialogue. And I think on top of what dialogue was there, we ad-libbed a little bit towards the second half. But yeah, I was on not sure if you're familiar, but there's this thing called a corpse paint show. It runs out of Dallas, I think, in Texas. And they like promote like indie filmmakers and stuff. So I actually I was invited on that show. And they stream it every Sunday, and like it streams like everywhere. I was invited, and I spoke a great deal about like what I'm trying to do with the film and all that type of stuff. And they're like, the two anchors in the beginning of the film, Jay and Lily, they actually run the corpse paint show.
Oh,
so
okay.
They're the newscasters. So that was like their contribution to my film, and they helped me a great deal, like with publicity and marketing and all that type of stuff. So that was really nice of them, and that was a pretty cool experience because me, being so involved in like the extreme metal music, like black metal, death metal, corpse paint show. The guy like who runs everything, Jay Gavitt, he has interviewed all of like these big stars, and he's met and taken pictures like at Gas Monkey in Texas, from all of like these gigantic like stars from black metal, from Dark Funeral, Botane, Rotting Christ, and all that type of stuff. So that was kind of like, an honor to be on that show where all of like these huge stars were like interviewed and photographed and hung out with and all that type of stuff. So that was pretty cool.
Oh, nice. Okay. So with it, so when you were writing the script and did you already know about the locations that you were going to be using? Like, oh, I know this is 150 miles away, I'll use that, or did you have to go locations?
I had a general idea of like what I wanted to use, and I had a general idea how I wanted the first part of the film to be more like industrial, quote unquote, because like you saw like the dilapidated buildings broken down, like factory and all that type of stuff, like train tracks, railroad, all that stuff. And then I knew I wanted the second part of the film, even before like COVID happened, I wanted it to be like more organic, like to really show like the move from, buildings, cars, factories, trains to, woods, small houses, a farm, like a side road, stuff like that. So I had a general idea of like what, locations I wanted and how I wanted to portray everything. However, as COVID happened, a lot of that had to be changed, of like what was going to be used and whatnot. However, the feel of it still stayed. I knew like I wanted to still stick with, being more organic feel, like in nature, versus, oh yeah, let's hide out in like some broken down factories, use the machinery and all that type of stuff. I mean, like, which is interesting because like I had access to all of that still like in the pandemic, but it was like one of those things like I'm not going to use this really cool location just for the sake of using a like really cool location. Like it wouldn't fit with what I was trying to do.
Okay. And what about yeah. Oh, so what about like the cast? I noticed that they're, you do like what many of us do, you use the same actors because you get along with them and they can kind of read your mind and stuff like that because you've worked together so many times. Did you already know what characters these people would be playing, or how that work?
The only one that I knew that I wanted at that time was Michelina, the lead character, because before I even completed the script entirely, I only had like a few pages done, but I messaged her and I like gave her this idea. I'm like, hey, like, would you be cool? So, I kind of gave her a synopsis, And I told her, I'm like, but the goal of the movie is this. So she understood that the goal was, to really make people uneasy. So then I ran like, the couple of things that she was gonna do in the film, like, are you okay like with portraying like you drinking your own urine? Stuff like that. So, I already had her in the back of my mind. I worked with her on a couple of different things, and she is super easy to work with. She has a very good range. Like in my films, like she's played, a teenage angst-driven, troubled kid in a divorce, in a broken home, to zombie apocalypse, to a suicidal captive, to trudging through the apocalypse. So like she can switch her emotions like pretty good. And yeah, so I knew like right from the get-go like who I wanted. So the only other like characters are Heather, the crazy blonde, well in this movie she's blonde, but crazy machine gun toting girl who captures Christina like in the tunnel in that one scene, and Christina. So those are like the only characters. In the beginning, in like with the Christmas tree and wrapping up the body like with the hatchet and the blood like in the house that Michelina goes into, that like she almost gets captured in. That was actually, it was scripted, but I cast those guys like literally the very last minute. It was like, I think it was like a couple of days before we started filming. So I sent them the script and I'm like, please like learn this as best as you possibly can. Whatever you don't get to, like we'll just, like we'll practice it like on set, like right before we roll, so it's still fresh. But yeah, so and honestly, I really don't want to, like not give credit to anyone, because everybody else besides Michelina and Crystal only has like one scene in the film, either like one scene or two scenes, like with Heather and Christina. But everybody, they're not just there like like just to be there, but like every single one of them, they like really drive a story, because they either help the character or they like do something like to place an obstacle like in their character's agenda. So then like I don't want to say like that they weren't important to cast, because they were. Like Heather was such a good, like just crazy, like it seems as though like as soon as like the pandemic started, like in the film, like she lost her damn mind, and like she was like, I'm just gonna hunt people. So like everybody like just literally contributed to the story so much that like now I'm going back in my head, I was like, wow, like that was a really good choice for that character, like for that role. So
was my scene always in there, or was that put in once they said, hey, I'd like to be in something
that was already in there. It's just that I didn't know if I'm going to film it or if somebody, because initially I was gonna ask, I was gonna put it out there. It was gonna be like one of those, hey, like this is what's happening. We want to portray like how like an apocalypse, quote unquote, is in like this part of the world or whatever. Because like you see, like because Sam Salerno, he lives in LA. He was in the back of my mind at once, and then like it was like as if by some chance, like you messaged me, he was like, hey, if you have anything going on, and I'm like, well, actually I do. So then I was like, you know what, we're just gonna make this easy. John already knows what's happening. You know, like let's just do this right now. So, and you know, it worked out for the best, honestly. So, like, still, again, I'm very happy with how it worked out. So,
Yeah, so am I. So yeah, thank you for letting me be part of it, because I'm very proud of it. So I'm very proud of the film, as a whole. So yeah, very proud to be in it. So so now you've gone through like pre-production, you're in production, virus hits, have to shut down, but now you almost kind of have to start over again, because now you're going to go back up. So now you kind of got to go through a little bit of pre-production again, back into production.
Yep.
So
yeah.
how did you, with all that downtime, did it take a little bit of an effort to kind of get up and running again?
It really did. Because I was really discouraged. You know, like I felt, I was like, listen, we literally have all of this footage we shot January and February. Like we have the very first scene that we filmed was when Michelina and David Anderson, her boyfriend in the movie, when they're running away. That was the first scene we shot for the film. And it was 7 a.m. It was January. It was cold. It was snowing. That was the very first scene we shot. We had a ton of people, and I was like, it was very disheartening. I was like, we're gonna scrap this. This is gonna end up in a garbage can. All of these people, like, who were, in the movie, and I see that happen all the time. And I'm sure you do too. Like when like you have people like come out, and the filmmaker either doesn't finish the movie, or it takes like 19 years to finish, or their scene just gets on a cutting room floor, and I really didn't want that to happen, and I really wanted to finish the movie because it meant a lot to me. So I literally had to kick myself in the ass a bunch of times, like to get things going again. So, and another hurdle was Michelina being pregnant, and her starting the show. So we literally went through several different scenarios, and then again, you have COVID. So we're like, okay, so, and in New York had very tough guidelines. Like you couldn't have like more than 10 people, 6 feet, all of that type of stuff. Most of the people in the second half of the movie were regularly tested because of their job. So we kind of knew to some extent, what we're dealing with. And again, like we took all of like the necessary precautions. Like we had sanitizer, like we had Lysol spray. I mean, like we were outside, but I mean, like back then, like you didn't even know like what's going on. So we're like, we're just gonna take all of this. We're gonna spray the air. Everybody's gonna walk through like this mist of Lysol, and magically everybody's cured. But I mean, I wish. I don't know if at that time we knew about Trump's cure, like injecting the hydro thing, like whatever he was telling people to inject.
Well, we were dumb for not doing it because he invested in that company. So by us not taking it, he lost money on that. So I did try the bleach, and my poop and pee came out white.
Injecting bleach.
Yeah, so that I never got the virus. So maybe drinking the bleach did work. So my insides are not white. So who knows? Maybe he is a genius. Maybe he has a big brain. So
but yeah, that was.
Oh,
sorry, go ahead.
No, please.
Oh yeah, so that was. I mean, so it was like it was like one of those like I want to film. I need to film this. I really don't want to go out, but we did. and I wouldn't have it any other way. Honestly, I'm very proud of everyone like in the film. Even with everything that was going on, everybody was like so freaking cool about everything. Um, and I think since like we were all just like, you know, locked up for a few months, just like not seeing each other and all, I think it really kind of added to like the dismal feel of like of the film. Everybody was like a little bit on edge about everything. So like it really was it tough, yes, but would I have it any other way? No, because I knew it wouldn't have the same.
It would the if you didn't have that break and the virus didn't happen, do you think that portion of the film would be different?
It would be very different. Yes, it'd be very different. And like it would, I still think it would have a very powerful impact, but not as much as this version right
now. Okay. Okay. So in a way, like your happy accidents, as much as the Correct. Coronavirus was horrible,
because the coronavirus didn't happen. I mean, like if it didn't happen, like I wish it didn't happen, but I guess like, you know, like even like with something so terrible here, like like, do you look for positives? I mean, for, you know, like for me, there were some positives that came out of this pandemic, you know, both my wife and I like started work from home. So we ended up like being with our daughter like 24/7. And that's something that I didn't have when she was born. I started a new job when she was born, and I didn't have any like, you know, sick time or anything like that, like because I just had started. But, you know, the company was nice enough like to give me a week off, you know, for when my daughter was born. And I'm like, well, I'm just a week off, like to see my newborn kid. So I felt like for the first like, you know, year and a half of her life, like I missed out on a lot of like growing up. But for like the last 18 or 19 months, you know, I'm very, very grateful for being able to spend like, you know, every day with her and my wife, so we can actually see her grow up and like, you know, like see her potty train, you know, like see her like, you know, like start to form like full sentences and stuff. So like actually like see her morph like into, you know, into a person. But then at the same time, like I look at this pandemic and I'm like, you know, a lot of people lost their loved ones. You know, my friend, a friend of mine's grandmother passed away due to COVID last year. Another friend's mom passed due to COVID. So, you know, like all the people in the beginning who were saying, oh yeah, it's just a hoax. Oh, it's just the media like blown it out of proportion. Yeah. I know personally a lot of people who've lost their loved ones. I know a lot of people, whole families who have had COVID twice in some cases. And yeah, like, you know, I communicated with them like while that was happening, and they were like, you know, even like, you know, a friend of mine, you know, I'm not gonna say any names, but you know, she's of German descent, you know, like a very strong body immune system and stuff. She's like, it kicked my ass. She was like, I rarely get sick. It kicked my ass. Like she was like, I could like rolling out of the bed, crawling on the floor, going to the bathroom, coming to bed was like, it's like as if I like walked 18 miles. So, you know, so again, like, you know, positive and negatives, you know, like I have some positives, like I said, my daughter, but at the same time, you know, I saw a lot of people like who lost their life savings, who lost their loved ones and stuff. So it's kind of like, you know, like, what do you like really think about the whole thing? So.
Right. Yeah. It's definitely a mixed bag, that's for sure. So it's so now the film is done, it's shot, it's wrap, it's in the can. And so what was post-production like?
So it's pretty much like all of my films, like, you know, while we film, I mean, you can literally like ask anybody that I've like ever worked with, like while we're shooting, like I'm always referring it to like, you know, like it's our film, you know, it's my film, it's Crystal's film, it's Jake's film, it's Michelina's film. Because like everybody just brings so much to the film, you know. So like now when I'm thinking about it, I'm like, I don't think I can imagine anybody else like, you know, that I know that I work with like in this role that Michelina was in, like to have the same impact. So like, you know, everybody has, you know, X amount of stake like in the film. However, like once it's wrapped, I have more like possession over it, because like I'm putting pieces of soundtrack that are given to me where I want. Something that we shot that was like, well, not in this case, but you know, something that was shot, you know, first that was supposed to be an opening scene is now like at the end, you know. So I'm kind of like, you know, I'm editing. So, but like I have like, you know, I have more stake, and I'm more controlling as to like what happens now. So I always edit by myself. And you know, sometimes, you know, it takes me a couple months to edit, sometimes it takes me, you know, 6, 7, 8 months to a year to edit. My film Killers of Killers right now, it's taking me forever to edit, but that's because like the whole film is being overdubbed, and everybody's lines, all the effects, everything is just being re-recorded like, from scratch. But yeah, like Anthropocene, like I really took my time. I worked with 2 composers. My good friend Jimmy, who I've known for a while, and he did a couple of soundtracks for me, and he's a very talented, classically trained musician, multi-instrumentalist actually. And the guy who did the majority of the soundtrack that you heard in Anthropocene, his name is Dimitri. He's from a Swedish black metal band, Gra. They featured a bunch of their songs in Holland Road Massacre.
Yes, yeah, I remember that.
Drummer. Yeah. He's their drummer, and he is also another very talented musician. So he's a drummer in a black metal band. So you know, he's very like he's very focused to the extremes of the music. Like if you're familiar with black metal, like I mean, it's not all the time, but like the drumming is very intense. So you have like, you know, like the machine gun. So like he's very, very capable. But then like I heard on a couple of their albums like some very mellow instrumental like ambient tracks, and I found out that is, you know, that he composed these. And I was like, hey man, like would you be interested in like composing for this movie? You know, because this is kind of like a field that, you know, that like I'm going for in this movie. I'm like would you be interested in doing something like this? And yeah, and like, you know, you can actually see his interview in the special features of the film. That was the composing the soundtrack featurette. So it's pretty cool. Like both him and Jimmy in the movie like offer some insight into like how they created the soundtrack. But yeah, like this one was really like I don't want to say tough, but it was like very meticulous. Because there's so very little dialogue in the movie. Like every shot is like supposed to tell a story. Like every shot is supposed to like meant to drive the story instead of like just being like a filler shot. So that's like where a lot of my editing literally just tell a story. And in my past experiences from Savage, people are not too keen on movies with not a lot of dialogue. I remember when I saw Dunkirk at a drive-in with my wife, I was like, oh my God, like this is a fantastic movie. Like, what a fantastic war movie. And it had like very little dialogue. And I was like, I want to do that. Like, I want to do a few films like when like it's literally just the stories told from the pictures. But then everybody like I talked to about Dunkirk, they're like, yeah, it wasn't too crazy. They didn't talk a lot. I'm like, well, did they have to talk though? You know, like do people have to talk? You know?
No,
So I don't
they
know.
don't. No. I mean, if you go on a hike, you don't need to talk. If you're just walking down the street, you don't
Yeah,
need to talk. I mean, it's more awkward to force that than anything. So,
correct.
no.
Like, you know, and that's what I was thinking. I was like, you know, like say like an apocalypse like really happened, you know, like I wouldn't stop and like discuss shit with my wife. I would be like, I'm like, holy shit, we're about to die. Let's go. And that's like all the talking that like you need to do, you know, like, but like, and like I just think like in all of like these, like in these movies, you know, like apocalypse, zombies and stuff, like characters are just talking way too much. You know, you know, they're the ones telling the story. Like, you know, like what they say in a scene is telling the story versus, you know, them being directed to do things in a movie minus the dialogue to tell the story. You know, like especially like in the apocalypse movies. I mean, like in a regular horror movie when there's, you know, slasher, serial killer and stuff like that. Yeah, you know, like, you know, dialogue drives the story. But like in something as like as an apocalypse movie where, you know, like there's like no people around, you know, like I just think a lot of dialogue is detrimental to, you know, the message, I guess.
Oh yeah. Well, and look at something like the Road Warrior. You know, Max barely speaks
Yeah.
a word. You know, and you barely need any explanation. I mean, Clint Eastwood in all the spaghetti westerns barely said a word.
The man with no name.
Yeah.
Well, Blondie is his name.
Blonde, yeah. But yeah, I'm not even sure if that was, I think we made that up. I think like Americans made that up. No, it's in the film. Yeah, I think they call him Blondie in the film as a joke because he's, yeah.
Tuco calls him Blondie on like several occasions.
Yeah,
But then
yeah.
there is something else. He's referred to as something else though in one of the films that I can't remember. Not by name per se, but there's like there's Blondie like in a third film, but then like a couple of in other films he's referred to as something else. But like if you blink you can miss it. But I know for a fact like somebody calls him something else at one point. But I mean he's still credited as like the man with no name. But yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And he barely speaks like in any of the films.
Yeah, you just don't at times, yeah, just need all that dialogue, which just which makes things worse at times. If you speak too much, it can actually make things worse. And the example that I use, I forget what book this was because it was so long ago, but I think it was like an independently produced book. But it was all about like mistakes in movies, and I'll make this very quick because it's kind of a long explanation. But they compared the movie Outbreak with Dustin Hoffman to the Bela Lugosi film The Devil Bat, and they said if you look at Outbreak, it's so dialogue dependent that scientists will say wrong, nope, wrong, nope, wrong. But if you watch Devil Bat, Lugosi takes the little bat, puts him in the machine, pulls the lever, and pulls out a giant bat. No reason for it. There is nobody can say that's wrong because he doesn't say anything. He doesn't go, aha, I'm now going to use the AB fibrillator to get the electricity from the. No, he just puts it in, throws the switch, smiles.
That's how it doesn't work.
Yeah, and so you can't say what he's doing is incorrect. So a lot of the times just not saying anything at all, like Jaws, why is the shark attacking everybody? You don't need a reason for that. It just is. It's just what the shark is doing. We don't need to know that it has mind control.
that's the thing. Like everybody wants some, like, like everybody wants to know why. Dude, trust me, that's my life right now. My 3-year-old, she's in the why stage. Like why this, why this, why that, why, like, why, you know. But so like but I mean, you can expect that from a 3-year-old, 4-year-old, but you know, like people our age, you know, like everybody wants to know why something. I guess I'm just gonna put this very simply. Like people nowadays have very little of suspension of disbelief. I took like years of like drama class, like college and high school and stuff, and um, you know, like some of like my favorite, things in high school, like English and stuff, were like, you know, when we wrote papers on like suspension of disbelief and like, you know, how like something that's not shown in the movie, something that's implied, like we just have to like fill in the blanks, you know, like when you're going up the hill and like you don't see what's on the other side of the hill, but like your mind is already drawing a picture of like, you know, what things behind a hill looks like. You know, so if you never see on the other side of the hill, like you have a mental picture of like what it could potentially look like. And people have very, very, very little of it left. You know, like everybody needs like, a very certain explanation of like why something's happening. Which I don't want to, which it's very dangerous to say nowadays because of QAnon and stuff. Like, like they create their own explanations and shit. So I shouldn't say like you don't need an explanation. You do. I'm just talking about film,
Right.
like film, literature, and that type of stuff. And honestly, I feel, part of it is because of lack of reading. People don't read anymore, and that's the book. Like you have to put the writers, authors, words, and you have to like paint an image to yourself. Yeah, like skin glisten, like in bright sun, and his freckles, and but then like you still have to draw that person for yourself. So when you have a population of like 350 million people, and like 200 million of those only read People magazine and Star, and National Enquirer and shit, like that's gonna do that to the population. Like everybody has like very little imagination and stuff.
Right.
I'm sorry, man. Like I always end on a negative note.
No, it's okay. So I've got 2 questions left for you, and then we're gonna wrap it up. So because we're actually at that point. So one would be the film's done. You got the whole thing finished. It's right there. What about distribution? How did that go for you? And where can people see this movie and buy it?
So lately I've been distributing on my own, more or less. I used to be like with a couple of like limited, distribution one-offs. I don't know if you remember Legless Corpse Films, Chad Armstrong.
Yeah.
He passed away a couple of years ago, I think. He had some sort of a cancer. Yeah, very like I was shocked when that happened. I was like very sad, like very young, like ambitious guy. Like he was like in the process of making it horrible.
Yeah, I'm going to interrupt for 1 second with that because I gave to one of his films. I was like, well, this is my early days when I was really only like giving the crowdfunding, and we spoke a few times. Yep. And I sent him. I did a couple different contributions to him, and then one day in a package, a finger showed up, which I think is right here. So let me see if I can get it in here. This showed up. It's actually, I think it's a thumb. And this was from the film that he was working on. And I've kept it ever since. And it's been in like Meat Massacre and whenever I need like a massacre done. So yeah, I remember him. We had a few conversations and he liked what I was doing. And so he sent me a prop from the film, and I'll never get rid of it. It sits up on my shelf on display. So yeah, it was very sad when he passed.
Cool. Very cool. Small world. Yeah, so that was so I was like very shocked, but like years before that, one of my first movies that I did, The Butcher, it's actually like it's the film's nowhere to be found anymore because it was like the film was a learning experience. Like I learned a lot, from the mistakes on that film. So it's not like a film that I like to showcase or anything. So it's like whatever physical copies are out there. But I used to be on his distribution for and Plague. And it was just one of those where, I was giving a part of my earnings as a cut, but like the films like really weren't like marketed or advertised or anything like that. So I left Legless Corpse and then I went so it's a very do-it-yourself small label run by a couple of guys in Germany by Daniel Conan, Underground Gore Lectors Films. He produced he distributed the first Plague, and he distributed Confessions of a Homicidal Prostitute. But it was like one of those, it's like, it's like mail order and stuff. Like you have to like pre-order and all that type of stuff. I mean, and I'm not in it for money, but it was like one of those, it came in a really cool collector's box. You can actually see them right here, right there. It's like VHS type tapes. I mean,
okay.
It's a VHS type box, but it's a DVD. And it comes with a poster. So there's a Plague, and there's a Confession of a Homicidal Prostitute. So, and it was like one of those, I'm like, well, like it's a one-off. So like he distributed a couple of my films. And then Ron Bonk, actually from SRS Cinema, he did a limited run of Savage. That's a pretty cool, it was a pretty cool Blu-ray release of Savage. And like one of those things, like I just like kept like seeing all of these guys, and like this has nothing to do with Ron Bonk or Savage or anything. This is like after like everything. Ron Bonk is like I don't know if you're familiar, but he's a super stand-up, like by the book guy.
Oh yeah,
like,
no, I know him. Oh yeah, I own many of his films, and
but,
yeah.
All of these other like labels and distributions, I think at like one time all I saw on Facebook was like, oh yeah, I never saw a penny from like my distribution deal. I never saw a penny from my distribution deal. Some people didn't get their orders, this and that. And I'm like, dude, I just can't deal with this. And I was also like with a book publisher at a time who, and credit where credit's due, like she really helped me like get my books out and all that type of stuff. But here I am like doing all of my legwork, like all of the legwork of like, promoting my books, and I'm still giving like a percentage of like my earnings, So I'm like, you know what? We're just gonna scale back. We're just gonna do everything ourselves. So for the past few years, I've literally been just self-distributing. It goes in Vimeo. It goes on Amazon. Lately, it hasn't been going on Amazon or Scamazon, because they're getting really like stricter and stricter on like the non-solicited submissions. I had like 10 movies on there at one time. Now I'm down to like 4 because they literally just remove them I mean, everybody lost so many films like from Amazon, like they just remove them like with any sort of warning, explanation, like they just take them down. So that's you know, but like we show it, like we show our films at a couple like local theaters around like Western New York and stuff. Um, the first one that we actually showed in the last year and a half has been Veronica, because all the theaters have been, you know, shut since the pandemic. So Anthropocene, we had an online premiere where we had the people pre-ordered the movie on Vimeo as a digital purchase or rent or whatever, and we had a live stream accompanied it. So we had some of the cast and crew. We were at my house. I had a bonfire. I had a bonfire and drinks and stuff, and we literally were just live, like on Facebook Live, for the entirety of the film, and we kind of did like a commentary track. We did that with Pigman. I mean, with my film Holland Road Massacre as well, because that came out. Well, that was completed before the pandemic, but you know, like while we were editing it, everything shut. So yeah, but I mean, it was pretty cool actually. You know, like people were asking us questions like in the live feed and stuff. You know, and it was a pretty cool experience. Like we got like a lot of good feedback. You know, because like it was kind of like a personal touch. It's like watching a movie on Netflix, but like listening to like the commentary, you know, at the same time.
Sure. Yeah.
That was pretty cool.
Sounds
But
fun.
yeah, so I mean, basically that's what we do, like a Vimeo release, then a physical release, like for collectors, for people who like to collect. I'm one of those. Like I'll stream all night and day on Vimeo, Tubi, Netflix and stuff, Amazon, you know, but I still like to have, you know, the physical copy of the movie.
Yes, because nothing beats this. This is just
nothing. Absolutely, nothing beats that. And it's very, very, very sad. It's dying out. Like we're like, I think honestly, and I think Netflix is to blame for all of it. Like Blockbuster going out of business, and family videos no longer. I mean, it is family videos still going, or like they have stores left, or because I know a bunch of stores around my area have like all.
I don't think so. I mean, I know in Vegas we there's like one, but because of the pandemic, it was like a mom and pop place. I think it got shut down.
We had 4 around Buffalo area, and they're all closed down. So yeah, it's very unfortunate. Like for example, like just to pick a movie, the new Borat movie, the subsequent movie film. I was like, we streamed it like when it came out, but then like you can't, as of yet, you cannot find it on any physical media. I was looking for it. I wanted to buy it, you know, and it's not available to purchase on Blu-ray or DVD. It's still only streaming. And I keep finding that with a lot of releases.
Yeah.
A lot of like new releases. They're literally just going streaming, or like on HBO Max is like is a big thing like in the pandemic now. People like studios release it directly to like HBO Max. So
yeah, it's I have found that with some stuff too. So you know, it's disappointing, and unfortunately, it's just going to die out. So
for sure.
Sure. So last question then would be, is there anything that you would like to plug, past, present, or future films?
Yeah. Well, first I like to plug my shirt in. All elections matter. No, my sister-in-law and her wife gave me this for Christmas. It's the White House with the rainbow colors.
I like that.
So
that's obviously the Biden presidency or the Obama presidency. Yeah, nothing in between.
So November 6th, you know, so last Christmas, and then it served well for the insurrection, you know, So, but yeah, so you know, all of my films, they are available on Vimeo on our Foxtrot Productions channel. Foxtrot Productions, so Foxtrot's one word, Foxtrot Productions. Yeah, Foxtrot Productions on Facebook, Emir Skalonja on Facebook. I mean, as my personal and my filmmaker, author type deal. Anthropocene is on Vimeo. Anthropocene is also on Amazon, surprisingly, as is Holland Road Massacre and my zombie comedy, which is actually a comment on the marriage equality. Till Death Do We Rot is also on Amazon. So yeah, there's still a bunch of my films are on Amazon, and all of them are on Vimeo, streaming, rent, purchase. Yeah, I have a very, very big film that I'm currently editing called Gravis Terrae. It's a Latin phrase for earthly grave. It's a body possession horror, which something that I've never did, never done. It's English is my first language, so.
As I understand.
It's a very, very trippy body possession body horror film. It deals with kind of a supernatural root, as it may, which actually I have right here.
Oh, okay.
So it deals with a single mother kind of recovering, you know, from her divorce, and she is, you know, kind of like on the mend, you know, kind of just taking time for herself, you know, enjoying, you know, like single life and whatnot, and you know, like she's just doing things by herself, like going on hikes and whatever. And one of these hikes, she finds this really weird looking root that she doesn't think anything of it. Like it starts like very innocently, and she slowly starts to learn that the root is just not like an ordinary. She got cut by it, so now like she feels as like things are like growing inside of her. Like she has like these like really crazy trippy hallucinations of like weeds growing inside of her, like leaving her mouth, like puncturing her skin and whatnot. And like she keeps getting like visions of like her daughter like entangled in like roots and being like devoured by you know, plants and stuff. The biggest thing about this film, there is a very, which I don't like to use it, but I have a very good guy who, his name is Jake Redknapp, who did a lot of digital effects in the film. A lot of like all the possessions in the films, it like we still use all of like practical effects and stuff, but there's a very intricate scene where a person is entirely devoured by like plants and vines and stuff, and like consumed like into the ground. And yeah, we show all of that. It's done through some pretty freaky digital effects, and it came out fantastic.
Nice.
But the biggest point of the film is the entire soundtrack is done by a guy named Sakis Tolis. He is the guitarist and vocalist, founder and the leader of a very famous Greek band called Rotting Christ. It's one of my favorite bands for as long as I can remember. And he is just such a fantastic person, a human being, not only like supporting, you know, independent film, independent artists like music and bands and stuff, going so far to like just randomly accepting my friend requests on Facebook and like striking like a real genuine friendship. He is like a fantastic musician, and he has like been in the metal scene for 30 years. And his band Rotting Christ is like they're the pioneers of like what would become like Hellenic black metal, where a lot of bands that came like in the late 90s after them like tried to replicate their sounds. So it was like I feel like it was a huge win for me, like to be able to strike a friendship with this awesome person, like who would, you know, actually, you know, agree to do something, you know, as to make a soundtrack for a guy that like he's never met in his life. Same thing happened to me like when I reached out to one of my favorite bands, Gra, who featured their songs in Holland Road Massacre. Andreas, who is also a lead vocalist for the band called Dark Funeral. I mean, these are like, you know, like all the legends of extreme metal, and Andreas himself is just such a fantastic person. So yeah, so Gravis Terrae, again, Latin for earthly grave, that should be available this Halloween, I believe. As everything is unfolding now, it should be available for Halloween. And lastly, since I for the last few months I took a break from filming. Actually, Gravis Terrae was the last thing I wrapped back in May. I haven't actually filmed all that much, but I've kind of stayed home, and I started a musical project, which is a black metal, which is like an ambient, dark, very heavy black metal project, also called Gravis Terrae. So I'm like writing songs that are very environmentalist in theme. So
Okay.
I am working on a 5-song EP that should also be available for Halloween. So.
Oh, very cool. Okay. Wow. Okay, so that's a lot.
But yeah, that's the songs I got.
And then I'll get some links for you from you, so I can put them in the description area so people can buy your stuff and listen to it, and novels, all that stuff. I mean, give me whatever you got, and I'll put it down there. So all right, everybody. Well,
thank you.
Oh yeah, sure. Well, thank you for being here. We're gonna wrap this up, and
I didn't even realize what time it is.
Yeah, I always have a timer going
cool.
because I don't want to go too far over our times. So because I know you're busy. Sure. People are busy. So but yeah, thank you for being on. I really appreciate it. And
thanks for having me.
Oh yeah, well please, yeah, it's an honor. So, and I'm gonna say goodbye to everybody out there, and then we'll see you next time around. So thanks everybody. I'll catch you later. Where's my hand? There you go. Bye.